name is Xiaobu. I'm a patient in a mental hospital on the west side of New York. This is where the patient could be admitted, one of the worst places. I've heard a lot about this hospital. You are inspected before entering the building. Half of the patients here are very scary and disturbing. They look like days. I haven't even showered in months. I was assigned to room 154. This is the biggest asylum I've ever seen. I've been diagnosed with major depressive disorder, anxiety, and anger disorders. I often have to hurt myself, cut yourself again and again. I've had these problems since I was born. My parents always ask me about my arm and cuts and residual injuries to the body. I told them I accidentally hurt myself while shaving. To make them stop worrying about me, I didn't want to tell them what I'd been through. I was committed to a psychiatric hospital when I was 18. I've made very few friends, but there's one girl who seems to like me. We had lunch together, talk about our lives. She got into trouble in Rome. She was a victim of abuse. She herself is also struggling with mental illness, fighting depression. I can really feel what he's going through. But there was one patient that really scared me. He has scars on his arms and face, looks like a monster. To this day, I don't even know his name. I don't know his medical history. I just know he's really dangerous. He was assigned to the room next to mine. I couldn't sleep so close to him. He spoke in a low voice. Sometimes I talk in my sleep. I told the nurse. I begged them to move me to another room upstairs, but they just told me to ignore him. I asked them when he was talking to himself in the middle of the night. How can I ignore it? The nurse just said she was sorry. We have no good way. So at night I forced myself to sleep. The next morning at breakfast, they took me out of the room. I feel very uncomfortable because of the guy next door staring at me all the time in the restaurant, as if planning to kill me in my sleep. I told myself this was a mental hospital. People will act weird or go crazy. I can only accept these situations. But later that night, when I tried to fall asleep, I heard him again. My heart sank. He knocked on the wall between our rooms. Say, I know who you are. I know what you look like. You want to be my friend? I replied, sir, I don't know you. I don't want to be your friend. You are terrible. Then he called me the devil in a threatening tone. I will torture you until you die. I don't even know what to say. I was shaking, very scared. I thought to myself what this guy was going to do to me. Am I safe in this cramped room? Will I survive? That night I tried to sleep, but fear keeps me up at night. The next day I went to the nurse, reported what happened. They said they would keep him under close control. It makes me feel better. And then until later that day at lunch, I just saw him again. That's when things got really unsettling. He has a fork in his pocket. My heart sank. I think this guy is going to kill me. I have to get out of here. Went to the nurse and told them about the fork. They searched him, but found nothing. They may not have found it thoroughly enough, or he hid the fork somewhere else. That night I lay in bed trying to sleep. He just walked right up to my door and said, "Are you scared?" "You should be." Then he approached me with a fork, stabbed into my chest and arm, blood like arrows. I cried out in a desperate voice. Finally they heard the sound and rushed into my room, then pulled him away from me. My blood is everywhere. I was terrified. I know he has the power to hurt me. He proved it then and there. The staff and nurses told me He will be transferred to the nearby Nia State Hospital to at least 7,090 billion hospitals. And beyond that, they assured me that he would no longer pose a danger. Now, my days in this mental hospital are finally over. It's over. I'm finally going home. I'm so relieved and grateful that I survived. It was absolutely terrifying. A doctor in Western Massachusetts. Unfortunately, I only started my formal career in the fall of 2019. This means that the epidemic, it made me have to adjust to being a resident physician. During the epidemic, becoming a new doctor is very painful, but it was also the first time that I had gone into medicine. The most disturbing experience. At the height of the epidemic, many non-ICU staff asked to help manage the intensive care unit because the number of critically ill patients is simply too large. Usually, I only serve inpatients in the general ward, but in December 2021, I was transferred to the intensive care unit. The vast majority of our ICU patients, it's all intubated. They had breathing tubes. It's because their lungs have completely lost function. Although, you've probably seen this on TV, but most intubated patients will be injected with shock drugs. They are basically sleeping. It's both humane and therapeutic. We usually don't want to intubate patients. Try to breathe on your own. This will cause their lungs to overinflate. The day this happened, everything was normal. This patient is a 60-year-old woman. No medical history was sent. He's been intubated for 2 weeks. His immune system has been helping him resist. This is similar to the situation of other people. He is slowly recovering. However, his blood pressure was difficult to control. Throughout his hospital stay, his blood pressure has been dangerously low. Therefore, the main sedative we use is ketamine. He doesn't usually affect his blood pressure, but it may have an impact on the separation reaction. It's a mental illness. When you use the respirator for a long time, your trachea, it actually starts to become rigid and inflexible. If this change occurs, you can't really breathe without a breathing tube. Your body, you basically have to rely on external tools. Because of this, about 2 weeks later, we will decide. Do you need a triangulation? Think of smokers with a hole in their neck. This usually affects the patient's life, have a very negative impact. So to see if he could breathe on his own, we started lowering the sedative dose. 30 minutes later, I heard some noises. I couldn't identify the voice at first. It's kind of like when you record the sound of a blender, then listen to the same thing with cheap earphones. It's very high-pitched, but also a little stuffy. When I turned around, I saw this patient sitting upright on the bed. I take a deep breath, take a step back. The voice I heard, it was him screaming into the breathing straw, not yelling. It's not howling. He was screaming through a breathing straw. His eyes were bloodshot. It looked like he was crying. But that could be because of artificial tears. Evil also began to flow down the corners of his mouth. Maybe it's because he screamed too much, resulting in throat injuries. Because of his novel coronavirus. So when he started screaming, there was no one in the room. This is part of infection control. To prevent us and healthcare workers infection with novel coronavirus, we need to put on protective clothing to interact with COVID-19 patients. We all rush to put on the right equipment. Enter his room. During this time, he had taken out his breathing straw. What scares us is, I will never forget what he said. When we got to the bedside, He pointed at us and said, "Please, send me back. Please, this is all wrong. It's not me anymore. I don't want to be here. It's painful. I didn't want them to notice that I had left. I want to go back. I beg you. Send me back." When he spoke, light is now flowing from his throat, out of his mouth. This is due to the trauma caused by extubation. We finally, after giving him an emergency sedative, put the tube back into him, but the damage has already been done. A few hours later, he passed away. A family member visited him on his deathbed. We can't bear to explain in detail what happened. Let's just say he unplugged the breathing tube himself. This caused a lot of damage. I don't know. When we've been sedated for a long time, where will our consciousness be? But I was afraid of that place. Death is eternal, but he's also balanced. Everyone rests in peace and oblivion, no longer bound by life's trauma. Grandmother in a hospital passed away, but the alarm in her room, it will automatically sound from time to time. I work as a nurse in a hospital in the United States, although I work in multiple departments at the same time, but still the most often stay in oncology and hospice. Oncology, focusing on the treatment and care of cancer patients. Hospice is for impending death and in need of intervention. So I have witnessed many people's final moments. I think helping others die with comfort and dignity is a very meaningful job. But there were times when death was near, bringing something unexplainable. One of the examples, it happened during my first year in the business. The patient passed away in the early evening. His family has left the hospital. Body has been cleaned and groomed. It's night now. Around 11 o'clock, I was doing my usual paperwork while waiting for the porters to remove the body to the morgue. It was quiet. Other patients on that floor. I'm already asleep at this time. The only sound, it's just me talking in low voices with the other nurses. The sound of various instruments in the ward, and the constant rumble of nearby buildings. At this time, the emergency bell on the nurse's station monitor rang. So let me explain the bell system. It is to let the people in the ward press the bedside button. This button is connected to the wall, will signal the monitor at the nurse's station. There are several available buttons. That includes an emergency call. However, this button cannot be reached on the bed, but on the wall. The monitor at the nurse's station will display the room number, the nature of the call, regular or urgent, and the ringtones for different calls. Regular call. This corresponds to the sound of slow relaxation. Toilet out of bed. The emergency call is matched by an urgent ringing. The light on the patient's door will also come on. We have 30 patients in this ward. It's not uncommon to hear a paging bell. We also often hear the call from the recently deceased patient's room, because the porters often ring this bell. Alert the nurse they're coming. But here's the strange thing. When I entered the ward, there was no one alive inside. This is not what I expected. The room is the same as when I left before. Gray light. Curtains are drawn. Corpse lying on its back. Cross your hands around your waist. Did I make a mistake about the room number I called? I glanced at the light above the door. I find it a little strange, but these systems sometimes malfunction. After the alarm is lifted, I went back to my desk. About half an hour later, the bell rang again, same as last time. I thought it was a porter, but nothing changed in the room. There are no porters in there either. I'm a little helpless. I thought the paging bell was malfunctioning. I also went to check it out. Is it the shoulder of a corpse? Accidentally touched the button on the inside of the railing, but it's not. To prevent the button from being touched again, I disconnected. Wires connecting the bed to the wall system. This could be an alarm caused by a circuit failure. Then I put the ward, and the alarms at the nurse's station were off. When the porters arrive, I can only let him come to the nurse's station in person. As I continued to work, clear and variable bed alarms sounded. This alarm is installed directly on the bed. Judging is based on weight. When the weight leaves the bed, this alert will be punished. Alert the nurse. The patient got out of bed when he shouldn't have. Under normal circumstances, this alarm is like the others. Will be installed on the SOS monitor at the nurse's station. In addition to that, the bed itself also sounds a loud alarm. This time there was no alarm on the monitor, but I can hear Wingming coming from down the corridor. I ran towards the sound. Thought you would see the patient getting out of bed to wash hands. Occasionally, when I realized the sound from the room of the deceased patient, my heart sank. The body is still in place, and the siren was so loud it made my ears ring. Because I disconnected the link on the bed before, the alarm didn't reach the monitors at the nurse's station, but I didn't make any other settings at all. The memory doesn't have to do this, because the patient has passed away. Maybe I forgot to turn it off. Anyway, there is no reason to remember this alarm. The patient didn't move, still in bed, and this is where I got scared. Compared to supernatural forces, I have always believed in science, and I don't believe in souls, but living with a lost body is a very special experience. Although they may have lost their vitality, but you can still feel it. It's an awesome presence. It feels like there's something else in the room. Keep it there, and begging for my attention. Was silent for a few minutes. Take a few deep breaths. Then I looked at the patient's chest. Did not move. He's not breathing. No vital signs. I gently patted his hands on his waist. These hands are cold, and then I could feel his limbs starting to stiffen. I left the room again. After about 5 minutes, the porter has arrived. I insisted they put the body on a stretcher, then put a layer of cloth on top. Then I called the cleaner to come and clean the room. Less than an hour. A new patient has been admitted here. Other nurses have also said these alerts are weird. But then what really touched me, if it's the new owner of the room, patient was wide awake. He asked me directly, has anyone died in this room recently? And I said, why? Then he went on to say that it was an old grandmother. Right, he died of lung cancer. I don't know how to reply to him because of the corpse I mentioned earlier. This is the case. Patient must have seen my surprise and just say, okay, can you open the window for this poor grandma? I know he did what he said. I never heard him mention it again. About grandma, I've had a few others. Goosebumps experience, but this is what I remember best.